This is Marsha Stonehill with Melt the Ice. Today on Operation F.L.O.W, I have the privilege of having back with me Dr. Vivienne McDaniel and Dr. Ernest J. Grant. Actually, Dr. McDaniel is becoming a co-host rather than a guest on this show. So she brings so many guests to us, and I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you, Dr. McDaniel. She is the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council of the Virginia Nurses Association and Virginia Nurses Foundation. She is the Diversity Ambassador and Consultant for James Madison University. She is the chair for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for Aspen University and the Professor of Nursing. She is the Vice President of the Central Virginia chapter of the Black Nurses Association and a member of the American Association of College of Nurses, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Leadership Network. Next, let me tell you about Dr. Ernest J. Grant. He is the 36th President of the American Nurses Association, the nation's largest nurses organization, representing the interests of the nation's 4.3 million registered nurses. He is the first man to be elected to the office of President of the American Nurses Association in its 125 years of existence. A distinguished leader, Dr. Grant has more than 30 years of nursing experience and is an internationally recognized burn care and fire safety expert. He previously served as the Burn Outreach Coordinator for the North Carolina J.C. Burn Center at the University of North Carolina Hospitals in Chapel Hill. In this role, Grant oversaw burn education for physicians, nurses, and other allied healthcare personnel, and ran the center's nationally acclaimed burn prevention program, which promotes safety and works to reduce burn-related injuries through public education and the legislative process. Grant also serves as adjunct faculty for the UNC Chapel Hill School of Nursing, where he works with undergraduate and graduate nursing students in the classroom and clinical settings. An active participant in professional organizations, Grant is a past chair of the National Fire Protection Association Board of Directors and served as second vice president of the American Burn Association Board of Trustees. He also holds membership in Sigma Theta Tau and Chi Eta Phi. Grant served as president of the North Carolina Nurses Association from 2009 to 2011. In 2002, the American Nurses Association honored Grant with the Honorary Nursing Practice Award for his contributions to the advancement of nursing practice through strength of character, commitment, and competence. In 2002, President George W. Bush presented Grant with a Nurse of the Year award for his work treating burn victims from the World Trade Center site. He was inducted as a fellow into the American Academy of Nursing in 2014. Grant holds a BSN degree from North Carolina Central University and an MSN and PhD degrees from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Thank you both so much for being with us on Operation F.L.O.W today, and I'm looking forward to our listeners hearing everything you have to share today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Glad to be here again. And you can call me Vivienne.
And you can call me Ernest or Ernie.
Okay, wonderful. So Vivienne and Ernest, please tell us what, I understand we're going to focus our conversation today looking at racial experiences in rural settings in particular. And are we talking about rural settings in Virginia or Virginia and North Carolina?
Virginia and North Carolina.
Okay. All right. So which one of you would like to start?
No.
I'll let Vivienne go first.
No,
please. No, please.
Honorable President.
No, please. The president defers to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Well, this is one of my favorite topics. I mean, actually, I just love having the conversation, period. those uncomfortable conversations a lot of times. But I want to start by first, since I am representing Virginia, and my city that I grew up in. I'm kind of laughing because I'm saying city. It's a very small rural village in Virginia called Claremont, Virginia. And Marsha, you have already met Reverend Robert Elliott. He was your guest earlier in one of the other podcasts. And we talked a lot about how we grew up there. But what I want to do, because I'm from Surry County, Virginia, is I first want to acknowledge that we lost a great man, Thomas S. Hardy. He and his brother, Norris Hardy, did a lot for Surry County. And he worked in the shipyard, and he was an activist. I mean, he was our civil rights activist, him and his brother in Surry. So I just want to acknowledge him and all of the things that he did for our county, because as you know, we had a lot of Black leadership in our county. So just wanted to acknowledge him. And in my small town, we were segregated, and we talked about that before, how the Black Americans lived in one area and the white people lived in another area. And there was not a lot of intimidation or the feeling that you were threatened, but you could clearly tell that we lived in a segregated America. And I'm so sick and tired of people saying things like, this is not the America that we live in or the America that we know. Yes, it is the America that we live in and the America that we know. This is, ever since I can remember, there's been racism. And I have seen crosses being burned. I don't know if you experienced that or not, Ernie, but in the adjacent town to us, Waverly, Virginia, the KKK would come out on a regular and burn crosses and hold rallies. So we would ride through there and you could see it happening, you know. And then the thing that happened in our school, where they came into our school and just wrote all kinds of graffiti on the wall and had us terrorized that we didn't want to go to our school. So those are some of the things that I have seen. And I've also seen racism in nursing. I did one presentation that showed different nurses, mostly white nurses, saying really awful things about their Black patients and awful things about their co-workers, and saying things like, well, those Puerto Ricans, they come in here and all they do is they murder people and they kill people and they all doing drugs and selling drugs. And that's just not true. It's a stereotype. And they would say the same thing. They said something about this Black patient. He got shot while running away from the cops, and the cops thought he had a gun, and he didn't. They found that he didn't have anything. And one of the nurses wrote on her Facebook page that it's good enough for him because he shouldn't have been running. Yeah. And she got fired. Mm-hmm. She was fired from her job. So yes, does racism exist? You know, all three of us are nurses. Yes, it does. It exists in nursing. So that's a little bit of what I can share with you right now. So now, President Grant.
Okay, thank you, Vivienne. And again, thank you, Marsha, for having me on. I guess my childhood was pretty much similar to what you experienced. I grew up in a little small town in the mountains of North Carolina called Swannanoa, which is part of, Buncombe. It's located within Buncombe County. Asheville is the county seat. The last time I was home, which is about 3 weeks ago, we're now up to 5 red lights. So, which is just amazing. I mean, well, we only had one for years and years and years, and now we're up to 5, and that's because the city of Asheville has grown as far as it could, in one direction. So now it is trying to spread out eastward, and so pretty soon, I feel certain that they will probably try to annex, the little village that I grew up in. Yes, it was a segregated community as well. My mother worked at the post office, and Stonehill had a population probably growing up of about 5,000 people. And with my mom working at the post office, everybody knew her and she knew everybody. It was sort of that small town. The biggest industry there was a manufacturing plant called Beacon Blankets. They made blankets, got real popular during World War II. And then once the war ended, they continued to make blankets and upholstery materials and, things like that. But their world headquarters was in Swannanoa, and then several other industries came in. I guess some of my earliest memories, let's see, I can remember when schools integrated, and, the sort of stern warning, I guess you could say, that I got from my mom and other people in the community, the first day that we were to have integrated schools, about how to act and, things of that sort. Really didn't have any problems, in the elementary schools. I do know that in the high school, because with the high school, the people from Swannanoa and the neighboring town, Black Mountain, joined together, at the one high school. And so there were a few, racial incidents, with that. But it wasn't on an everyday occurrence or whatever. And it wasn't, I wouldn't necessarily say it was more racism than it was just, teenagers fighting. But one of the things they, and attempt to be progressive, if you will, knowing that there was no way you were going to have a Black homecoming queen or homecoming king, they did have what they call a Black representative, for someone who was on the honor court or the sports honors court. I would say, though, that the biggest thing, and one of I don't want to say the reason that I left, but I definitely knew that my life could have been planned out for me in a couple of ways. One, it was that you graduate, typically everyone there, it didn't matter what color your skin was, everyone probably went to work in the local mills. And the mill, that being a mill town, they pretty much had a steady flow of people coming in, and that they owned a number of houses around the mill. So you worked there. They provided healthcare. There was a family practice physician who was hired by the local mill to see patients and et cetera. Of course, the houses that were owned, they were owned by it was owned by the mill, but they were either rented to or maybe their white workers purchased the homes, perhaps maybe on a rent-to-own basis or something like that. But there were no homes like that were set up for African Americans or other people, people of color in the community. But you had the option was going to college was considered, I guess, a luxury, type thing. And one of the ways that the mill, not only Beacon, but some of the other manufacturing companies as well, ensured that continuity of workforce was in the 11th grade. Once you turned 16, usually you got your driver's license, which everybody wanted to do, and you could work in the mill. So they had this club called the DECA Club, which stood for Distributive Education Clubs of America, which allowed you to essentially get out of school an hour early if you had a job at the mill, because the mill worked 8-hour shifts, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. So if you were a member of the DECA Club, then you got a few minutes of education or whatever, and then you were allowed to leave school about half an hour to 45 minutes early, go to your job in the mill. You got a job in the mill, and of course, this is the way they would have a steady workforce. In that now you're beginning to to have money that you didn't have before, and if you were poor, obviously that extra money helped the family out. You could pay some bills and things like that, but then you also got your car. But then if you get a car, you got to get insurance, you got to have gas, and all this other stuff. So you continued to work. So even if you had aspirations of going to college, you were, once you begin to, realize that, hey, I got all this stuff going, and if I quit working, I'm not going to have that money coming in. My family doesn't make enough or whatever. So next thing you know, you got married, you had kids, and and then your kids were doing the same thing, and then their kids, and et cetera. So there was a steady flow there. For those of us who were lucky enough to to look at college, and mine started out going to the local community college, and actually before then it wasn't even called a community college; it was called the Technical Institute. So that shows you how how old I am. But that's where my career started. And I was very fortunate that I was able to get some scholarships to be able to do that. And once I got the nursing bug, I realized that I always wanted to do more for my patients, because I started out as an LPN. In that role, your scope of practice was very limited. And so I knew that in order to really make a difference for the people that I cared for, I needed to go back to school and get my, get an associate degree or baccalaureate degree. And so I started taking courses part-time at the University of North Carolina in Asheville. And with the idea of working towards my baccalaureate degree. But it was some very exciting times. I feel very blessed, because I did have a community. You've heard the term, it takes a village. I really did have a village on both sides, black and white and other ethnicities. As I said, since my mother worked at the post office, everybody knew that you were Annabelle's kids. And so you couldn't do wrong, because, and she would even tell people, I don't care if you're black, white, red, blue, yellow, green. If you see my kids being wrong, you have my permission to punish them. And if you don't, then I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to come to you and chastise you as to why you didn't, punish my kids. So it was sort of that, that way. But I think more closely, though, the African American community that I grew up in, there were a lot of people who sometimes people see things in you that you don't see in yourself. And there were people who saw, I guess, a different set of values, if you will, in me that, they would tell my mother, he's going to go somewhere. He's going to make something of himself. And, he's the chosen one, and, and et cetera. And even when I go back home now and visit with the few friends of my parents that are still alive, they would sit back and say, yeah, see, I told your mom that, you were going to do something, or, we're real proud of you. And, you sort of feel that you're wearing this badge of honor because everyone put their hopes on you, and you were able to fulfill their dreams, so to speak. Like they realized that, some of the older adults that they had a limited education, but here you have an even better or greater opportunity, and whatever they could do during that process to ensure that you were successful, they certainly did. And so it's great to realize that, you were, I guess, the chosen one, and that you were able to make people in your community proud of your achievements and what you were able to do. And it's not just me as well. I mean, there's other people of my generation, but we were talking earlier, like I do remember, as I previously stated, when schools were segregated, or desegregated, I should say, the first time of that, it was, growing up in Swannanoa, though, everyone was sort of in the same economic pot. You were poor, but everybody realized you were poor, but you shared things. Like you grew a big garden. You shared the vegetables and fruits when they would come into time for harvest, and et cetera. I remember my mother canning oh God, just about everything, tomatoes and beans and, or freezing corn or, or freezing green beans or making grape jelly and, things of that sort. Actually, I still have several jars. I wouldn't open them right now, but just from a memento, just a mere fact that she canned those things with love. I still keep a couple of those, from the last bit of canning that she did. But that was life back then. You did share things. So.
Well, at least you had a few more traffic lights than we had.
Oh no! Well, this is just recent.
Only had one.
Well, we only had one up until probably about 10 years ago, and then they added another one. Well, maybe 15 years ago, they added another one. And then in the ensuing years, they've added the three others. So yeah, we're
Ernest. We only had one. It used to blink yellow on one side and I believe red on another, and then they turned it into a real traffic light. It's the only one there.
Okay.
And it's actually at an intersection that leads you to the Jamestown Ferry, so that you can go from Surrey to Williamsburg.
Oh wow!
So yeah, so that's, if you ever have to come Route 10, you would have, and you're trying to go to the Jamestown Ferry to go to Williamsburg, Virginia, you have to go through that traffic light.
Okay.
Our one traffic light, but we have a lot of entrepreneurs. We have a lot of, even during my childhood, we had I know two stores. Mr. Buster King had a store, and he specialized in ice, selling ice. And then Miss Walter Jones and his wife, Durlise Jones, they had a store in our town as well. So we had two stores that we could, go to. And then my aunt and uncle had a spot called May's Barbecue, and it was right on Route 10. Had gas, the people would come through and stop, the Green Book.
Yes.
So
they were in the Green Book.
I'm not sure if they were actually ever in the Green Book, because I only have one of the last edition of the Green Book. But I will tell you this: all of the buses stopped there. The Trailway buses, Greyhound, anybody who traveled through there, and you had to go there to get to like Norfolk and places like that, they stopped there. So I probably have gassed up the cars of people and didn't even know who they were. In my adult life, I got to know a lot of people. So who knows? Some of them may have come through my Aunt Zetta's store.
Dr. McDaniel, for some of our listeners, or you said it was okay to call you Vivienne. Will you describe what the Green Book is for some of our listeners who may not be aware of what the Green Book is?
So the Green Book is this book, and I have my copy of the Green Book somewhere close by, but so I can't remember the name of the author. But the Green Book is a book that Black people used to use when they were traveling, because they couldn't stop and go to hotels like that where white people had the privilege of going to. So there were a group of hotels in there that people could stay in. And I have a friend named Florence. I always say it wrong. It's Florence Jones Clark, or either Florence Clark Jones. I always say it wrong. But I believe her family had one of those places that people could come to and stay in Petersburg, Virginia. And so along the way, in all of the different states, they had places that Black people could go for food, where Black people could go for lodging, and where Black people could go to get gas and different things like that. So,
and I think we need to emphasize also that to try to go anywhere else could be actually very dangerous.
Oh no, people were murdered. People were killed for just coming to try to get gas. Or you had people like Sammy Davis Jr. that had to go through kitchens to perform in venues that he was on. So and hopefully we are going to be bringing on some jazz musicians that will be able to talk about those kind of things that happen to musicians back in that day. So hopefully that will be, well, not hopefully, that will be sometimes in August. But yeah, I was trying to pull up my green book so you can see what it looks like. But a lot of people, just like they didn't know about, what is it, Tulsa, Dr. Grant?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know about the green book. They didn't know about the green book.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, until the movie came out.
Until the movie came out, and I don't just mean people, non-Black people. Black people didn't know that it existed.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
Until the movie came out.
Absolutely.
So, but I'm still looking for my book. I have it in here somewhere. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so
while you're looking for that, can I go back to while we're, because we're talking about rule settings and things, and socioeconomics and poverty that can be found in rural settings. And then the fact that a lot of times in rural settings, there may have been Black families that were participating in sharecropping or crop sharing. Which way is, I always get confused.
Sharecropping.
Say that sharecropping with poor white families also. And then that creates this illusion, I guess I would say, among poor white people and among white people in general, that the experience then is the same on, for Black people and poor white people. And I think this is an opportunity as nurses where we really need to give some educational information for people to hear the facts about where and how and why it's very different.
Yeah, it is very different. Go ahead, Dr.
I was just going to say, it could be, there's a number of things that could, even though you have the duality or, experiencing the same thing, socioeconomically, it still would be hugely different though, because say that, when you're sharecropping, you get your money when the crops come in, right? So if you did not have that good of a year, or if it was a drought or something like that, the monies that you would owe, you still had to, to pay that somehow or another. You may have credit at the local, community grocery store or, and et cetera, but you were expected to pay that bill off. When, they were extending you credit. But again, if you didn't have that good of a year or that good of a crop, then you may not have gotten credit. And that's why people would always be self-sufficient and plant their own vegetables and things like that. But there were still essentials that you needed, like flour or sugar, or, everybody probably had chickens that would lay eggs. And that's why you killed a hog once a year to have enough meat to sustain you for, through the winter, at least, because usually hog killing time was in the fall, early fall, and you'd have, but what may happen to a Black family as opposed to a white family when it came time to, to settle your account, you may not have been able to have done that if you were a Black family. There may be an additional interest or something like that could have been added. So as a result, you were never getting out of that hole because, because of the fact that you were always in debt. And, no matter what, or if you did come into money, then the question is, where'd you get the money?
Right. And look, may I add also that you can be a poor white person and walk down the street and don't get accosted because of the color of your skin. Mm-hmm. I mean, we are on the same level socioeconomically, but I'm not. My son might walk out in the street and get shot because he's Black, but a white person on the same level with the same status might not. So, I mean, I have to throw that in there because it has happened many times. I mean, yes. I think often about Emmett Till and what happened to him. And so this is the cover. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, I'm holding it wrong. So that's the cover. And inside, the guy's name is Victor Green. And inside, it has all of these different places, hotels, taverns, garages, nightclubs, restaurants, service stations, automobile places, tourist homes, roadhouses, barber shops, and beauty parlors. That's basically what he had in the Negro Motorist Green Book. So,
and also sometimes suggested routes that you need to take as well.
Yes. So yeah, I looked to see if, in fact, Reverend Curtis Harris's snack bar, the one that we talked about, it was on Route 10, off of Route 10, just off. I mean, you could see it from the street. And I don't know if he was ever in the Green Book either. You would think he would, being that he was such a large person in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, at being vice president. So you would think that he would definitely have been
I'm sure
in
it
there.
probably was.
Yeah. But see, I only have this is the last book that they did, and it's the only one that I have. So I need to do some more investigation.
You need to protect that book.
Oh, absolutely. I have it on my Kindle, and I have the actual book as well. The hard copy, soft copy. What do you call it? I can't think right now.
The paperback edition.
The paperback, exactly. That's what I was saying. So yeah, I mean, this whole journey, or I should say an excursion, really, it's just been unreal to me. You mentioned, Ernest, that you experienced the integration of your schools. Well, I never did. I always went to a segregated school. And what I remember mostly is that we had hand-me-down books. Did you guys have hand-me-down books as well?
No, well, I can't remember the first 2 years that I went to, first and second grade. It was an all-black school, and I can't remember that or not. But so when schools integrated, I was in the third grade. But one of the things I do remember was that obviously I went to the white elementary school in Swannanoa, and one of the things that talking about a little bit about activism was that they, and by they, I'm talking about the African-American leaders in the community, they pulled to have one of the teachers who was in at the black school that I went to was called Carver Elementary, obviously named after Dr. Carver. And they had Miss Pinkston, her name was Roberta Pinkston, to come down to the white school to teach in the first grade there. Which was a tremendous thing when you stop and think of it, because she was the only black faculty for a while at that at that school. And the principal, that was the principal of Carver, the black school, he, I guess, perhaps got busted in rank and went to the Asheville school system, I guess, as a teacher there, or maybe something in the administration. Not quite sure what happened with all the other black teachers from Carver, but I think most of them did find jobs in the perhaps the Asheville city school system. But I do remember Miss Pinkston coming down to to teach at Swannanoa, and so it was interesting.
Yeah. So Marsha, you quiet.
I'm letting our listeners learn from your experiences and everything you're sharing.
What about your hometown, Marsha?
Well, I don't have as much to share about my hometown. I grew up in the small town of Bridgewater, Virginia, and I honestly didn't see a lot. But where my eyes have been opened and where my journey began is when I came to the rural community here in King George County, Virginia. And I came here in 2007. And I've done some podcasts with different residents here in this county who have shared very similar stories to each of you about the Klan activity, you know, seeing where the Klan would rally together, the cross burnings. I did have a teacher share with me. She didn't go on podcast, but she did share remembering a Black student coming to school after integration, and she was crying, and she had been crying because there was a cross burning in her backyard the night before. You know, and so really, and then as far as the thing that I hear about this rule setting a lot was that it was the phrase that I hear often here is that, you know, you had to go along to get along. Everything was fine as long as you stayed in your lane or you didn't say too much, right? And if you cooperated with the way it was, then there wasn't going to be any problem. But I've also learned about, you know, unethical and even criminal activities that were never accounted for because it was a small rural county and the leadership were members of the Klan.
Yeah.
I think this is something that is important to talk about as far as when I used to think of the Klan, Ku Klux Klan, you think of the movie Mississippi Burning or something like that, right? The men riding in on horseback and doing atrocious things. But you're not taught to think about that these people were the bankers or the preachers or the school superintendents or you know, that they worked in places, they were in positions of leadership and power, and they were not outspoken about their opinion. They would do the opposite. They would say that they're here for you, right, to your face or to other white people, because everything they did was very on the lowdown, would we say? You know, it was very secretive so that they could continue to get away with doing the things that they were doing. And so it's a very interesting system in that regard that perpetuates the denial of it, I think, when it comes to systemic racism, because it's not things happening blatantly all the time in the streets, and not to dismiss the things that are happening in the streets, but we also need to talk about the things that are happening behind the right under our noses without even knowing it. But that was definitely, that's what has really been eye-opening to me, you know, is to really come to that realization and understanding, and how that does affect a community, and how it inhibits people from being activists or standing up for what is right, especially in a small rural setting. Right. Because everybody knows everybody. And, you know, it's like what I've come to understand is the Black people knew who the Klan people were, but the white people didn't seem to know. Or if they didn't know, they didn't acknowledge it because they were equally afraid of those people. I can't say equally afraid, but they had
definitely not equally.
Yeah, so forgive me for saying that, but they had their own level and experience of intimidation. Yeah, and of course that's a whole nother conversation, because this is where, you know, if we don't speak up, if we don't have these conversations, if we don't stand up to what these people are doing, then how are we ever going to make change? Right. So, wow. You know, what I have learned in the last, since 2012, I would say, is when my eyes began to open to the work that we still need to do, you know, and that's obviously an ongoing journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to let I'm going to let Dr. Grant, my son would get on me if I didn't put respect on your name. So it's hard when I say Ernie or Ernest, because my son Daryl has already told me I have to he said I have to spread respect on your name like I spread butter on my bread. So I have a hard time saying Ernest. So Dr. Grant, because of the time, your time constraints, I really want you to go ahead and say some last words here, because Marsha and I can continue to talk, but I know that you have to leave by 2:20. So.
Well, I guess some of my last words is that this is a great conversation, and would love to have like a second and third edition of it, and invite others to participate. I think when you look back on it, like I will be 63 this year, and to look back over my 63 years of existence, you begin to realize how truly blessed you are and how far you've come, but then you haven't really came that far. Right. But you, I think, I'm only 5 generations removed from slavery as I begin to track my family history. And so it's amazing to see where, where I have come compared to my ancestors. And, who would have thought? I mean, it was never on my mind that I would be, president of a national organization, or actually, twice again, because I was chair of another national organization. But to have, this is by far the largest, representing 4.3 million registered nurses. That's
or
huge.
That you would go to the White House.
Yeah, or to go to the White House.
Sorry
twice.
for your time. Sorry for your other time there. But anyway, we won't talk about that.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to go back again under the current administration. But but still, it is just amazing. And for the young people in the audience who may be listening, who may be thinking that this could never happen to them, or they can't do that, or whatever, all it takes is for you to have some determination and some grit, and to also get yourself some mentors, people who are going to lift you up, not people who are going to pull you down. The first time someone says, "Oh, you can't do that," or you're not qualified, or something like that, you got to prove them wrong. You got to dig down deep within yourself. I hate to use that old cliche, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but in some cases, that's what it may take in order to for you to have that determination. It's you've let their naysaying be your North Star, so that you can turn around and, once you've reached that, achieve what you want to achieve, you can turn around and say, I did it. And not only that, but hopefully maybe you did it with honors. That's the other thing, is to, set yourself apart. So never let anyone deter you from anything that you have set in your mind and in your heart that you want to achieve. There is a way. You just got to be have the ambition, be enough of a detective, if you will, to figure out what are the obstacles that I need to to have these workaround or whatever in order to achieve what I want to achieve. And if it's money or whatever, there's plenty of scholarships and things that are out there for people. Again, it just takes the time and the diligence to go through and find the right scholarship or the right grants or whatever that would help you. So again, finding that mentor, someone that you admire, who could point you in different directions or whatever, that within itself will be a huge momentous thing for you to help keep you on the path that you want to achieve.
Absolutely. And for anybody that's out there, I am a mentor, and I have several people that I mentor right now, and they're doing wonderful things, definitely doing more than I am doing out there. So I love mentoring. And Dr. Grant, I know you're going to come back again. I know you'll come back with Katie Boston Leary. You'll come back again. Bim sends his apologies. Bimbola Akintade.
Yes.
And also Dr. Shelton Fields. But Marsha, I am going to have Dr. Grant and the president, well, let me say this over. President Grant, President Ernest Grant of the American Nurses Association, but I'm also inviting, and she has said that she will do it, President Martha Dawson of the National Black Nurses Association. And oh boy, you're in for a treat.
Yes.
The audience is in for a treat with those two individuals. So I look forward to doing that. And we're going, you have 4 minutes, Dr. Grant.
Yeah.
But also look forward to having some Black farmers. Some from Virginia, and we have one from your area, Dr. Grant, who is, I have to get back with him again. But yes, I think that we're going to have some fun with some of these guests that we're going to have on the podcast. But we don't want to keep it too long, Marsha, because then people won't listen.
Right.
So we can actually end when Dr. Grant, when he has to go. But I want to share one more book. Wait a minute. Can you see it?
Yes. Forgotten Angels.
Are you familiar with this book?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Oh my gosh. Marsha, you have to get this book.
Okay.
And learn about the forgotten Black nurses who took care of people during the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
So I got this book. I can't remember Constance's last name, but Dr. Constance was one of the nurses at our 50th anniversary for the Black Nurses, the Black Nurses Association, our 50th anniversary. And she told me about this book. So I'm excited. I've started reading it. So Marsha, you and I can talk offline about some of the exciting things that I've read so far.
And can you tell me where I and the listeners can access that book?
I got my book I get almost everything Kindle, but I also had it delivered to my house today. But I got mine from Amazon.
Okay.
So if you go onto Amazon, it's called Forgotten Angels: The Lives of African American Women Who Served as Nurses in the Civil War. It's by Kalinda Page and Jack McElroy.
Beautiful.
McElroy, yes. Okay.
Thank you for the information.
So thank you for being here with us, Dr. Grant. It is also always a pleasure, and I can't wait for you to come back again.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to, let's see, you've identified, I think, 2, maybe 3 opportunities where I will be coming back. So yes, I look forward to that.
And don't forget, I'm sorry, Marsha.
I was going to say, so until next time.
Oh, yes. And don't forget, I'll see you on August 23rd for our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council meeting for the American Nurses Association, for the Virginia Nurses
Association. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.